From the mop-top haircuts to their songs about being in love, the teenage heartthrobs known as the Beatles swept the globe, changing the lives of everyone who listened to their captivating music. The Beatles not only made irreverence hip in mainstream culture, but also using hallucinogenic drugs to turn off your mind. Today, we will analyze some of their lyrics, interviews, and music before and after their LSD-embracing album, Revolver. This is the story of the Beatles, the trip that changed them forever.
The Beatles were among the first and certainly the most far-reaching of pop bands of the 60s to infect mainstream America with the psychedelic virus. This actually upset parents because they thought their kids listening to the music would influence them to do drugs. The Beatles established British youth and popular music culture, which led to the British invasion of the mid-1960s. The Beatles psychedelicized us and mainstream culture.
Now, let's take a look at what LSD is, how the Beatles took it, and what their first trips were like.
LSD is manufactured from lysergic acid, which is produced from crystalline form and then mixed with excipients or diluted as liquid for production in ingestible forms like on sugar cubes and within squares of gelatin and most commonly as water paper. The effects of LSD are predictable. Usually the first effects of the drug are felt 30 to 90 minutes after taking it, and the user may experience extreme mood changes, several different emotions at once, or swing rapidly from one emotion to the other. If I took LSD in a large enough dose, I could experience delusions and visual hallucinations, have diluted pupils, higher body temperature, and sweating may occur, and it may make you feel insane.
Just in London, laid it on George, me, and our wives without telling us at a dinner party at his house. He was a friend of George's and our dentist at the time. And he just put it in our coffee or something, yeah. He was saying, I advise you not to leave, and we thought he was all trying to keep us for an orgy in his house, and we didn't want to know, you know. I mean, it was insane going around London on it, and we thought when we went to the club, we thought it was on fire, and we were cackling in the street, and then, you know, people were shouting, let's break a window, you know, we were just insane. I mean, we just had our heads, and finally we got in the lift, and we all thought there was a fire in the lift. It was just a little red light, and we were all screaming like that. And the lift stops, and the door opens, and we all go, ah! And we just see that it's the club, and then we walk in, you know, sit down, and the table's elongated. It was only a table like this with four of us around, but it went this long. And then some singer came up to me and said, can I sit next to you? And I go, only if you don't talk! You know, like, because I just couldn't think. And then George somehow or another managed to drive us home in his Mini, but we were going about 10 miles an hour. It seemed like 1,000. And I was getting all this sort of hysterical jokes coming out, like a speed, because I was always on that. So go, oh, you know, and George would go, don't make me laugh! Ah! And, you know, God, it was just terrifying. You know? But it was fantastic. And then George's house seemed to be like a big submarine. I was driving it. They all went to bed. I was carrying on, and it seemed to float above his wall, which was 18 foot. You know, like light.
So in the early 60s, while the Beatles were in Germany, they started taking Preludin and Benzedrine. They started smoking marijuana regularly after Bob Dylan introduced it to them in 1964. John and George accidentally took LSD for the first time in 1965, while a man at this party spiked their drinks. Ringo tried it later that year, and Paul eventually did in 1967.
By now it must be obvious to you, as it is to me, that LSD is very powerful stuff.
Yeah.
The lyrics to the song Tomorrow Never Knows may have sounded like they were based off of an LSD trip, but were actually plagiarized from a book called The Psychedelic Experience, a manual based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The song featured abstract lyrics infused with a spiritual undercurrent. John Lennon's vocals were processed so that it sounded swirling and distant, and Paul McCartney's laughter was looped and played backwards to produce a flock of crying seagulls.
Strawberry Fields Forever set the pattern of psychedelic tones on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which people believed was the most influential rock album ever recorded. Psychedelic rock and its lifestyle inspirations would subsequently become a major aspect of U.S. culture for the next several years. Once the Beatles weighed in, Tangerine Trees and Marmalade Skies were no longer the exclusive province of what handful of British musicians and the American chemist who inspired them.
Paul, how often have you taken LSD?
4 times.
The man at the time, the newscaster, showed up and said, "Is it true you've had drugs?" And I made a sort of lightning decision. I thought, well, I'm either going to sort of try and bluff this. They're at my door. I can't, go, no, go away. Or I'm just going to tell him. And I thought, sod it, But I did talk to him beforehand, and I said, look, you know what's going to happen here? I'm going to get the blame for telling everyone I take drugs. I said, but you're the people who are going to distribute this thing. I said, I'll tell you. I said, but if you've got any worries about this having an effect on kids, then you don't show it.
Well, do you think you have now encouraged your fans to take drugs?
I don't think it'll make any difference, I don't think my fans are going to take drugs just because I did, But the thing is, that's not the point anyway, I was asked whether I had or not. And then from then on, the whole bit about how far it's going to go and how many people it's going to encourage is up to the newspapers and up to you, on television.
The idea behind Revolver was to add as many new sounds and instruments to the mix as possible while making sure that all of the old sounds appeared brand new. The Beatles' writing styles and music were changing and taking more risks than before, influencing countless other bands with their unique chord changes and distinctive lyrics. Before Revolver, the Beatles wrote softer tunes while Revolver featured wittier, mind-expanding songs influenced by drugs they were consuming at the time. LSD opened the door for the Beatles to invent British psychedelic rock music and interpret their experiences into mesmerizing tracks for the whole world to hear. The Beatles pioneered many techniques for creating mind and mood-altering music while producing Revolver. The Beatles pioneered many techniques for creating mind and mood-altering music while producing Revolver. Such techniques include recording songs backwards, having beat-driven loops as the basis for a song, and having intentional feedback buzzing at the opening of and throughout songs. The impact the Beatles had on the world of music and on the world in general was and is, no doubt, incredible. Without the Beatles, there would be no psychedelic rock music, revolutionary recording techniques, and no authentic, handwritten compositions that would join people together and inspire love.